Hello, my name is Hassan Sorrells, and this is the Leadership Lessons from the Great Books podcast shorts. There's no co-host on these shorts episodes. These are now around 2 to 4 minute, sometimes as long as 6 to 10 minute observations, ideas, thoughts, or rants about the literature, philosophy, psychology, and even the theology of leadership. Because listening to me talk about leadership for now around 2 to 4 minutes is still better than reading and trying to understand yet another business book. Even that business book your coworker won't stop raving about because it quote-unquote changed their life, but you can't see any difference in their leadership behavior. So how good could that author be? Egalitarianism is a sin. The idea that men and women are interchangeable in their talents, skills, abilities, and interests has taken hold of the thought mind of the elite Western world for at least the last 80 years. This idea, born in the space between wars, driven by the force of dubious social movements, and supported by self-serving bureaucratic policies, has led to the remaking of the family, the inverting of interpersonal relationships, and the deconstructing of what used to be considered normal by biological standards. And that's not all. The zero-sum game played by those who advocate for an egalitarian ideology around the talents, skills, and abilities and interests of men and women has led inexorably to the idea that women, particularly women in the nation-states of Great Britain, Canada, and the United States, should serve in frontline combat roles. Because if we're raising women with quote-unquote girl power and the ability to quote-unquote girl boss, then it only logically follows that those same women should be either conscripted into or encouraged culturally to volunteer for the same frontline roles men have been biologically wired to either volunteer or be conscripted for throughout human civilization. I'm not going to make any caveats for this idea today, nor am I going to dissect the foolishness or wisdom, take your pick, behind such advocacy for egalitarianism. Instead, I am going to address the other wandering buffalo in the room, the remarkable lack of interest in what it takes to actually make war. The journalist Sebastian Junger, who was embedded with 2nd Battalion, 3rd Platoon in the Korengal Valley in Afghanistan from 2007 to 2009, and documented what he experienced with those young men there in the book War, which we covered on the podcast recently, made the same point in a roundabout way that I am leaning into now. We, in the peaceful, wealthy, and relatively free from danger middle-class West, don't understand the conditions that create violence, and we are shocked, aghast, and weirdly dismissive that violence may actually have a social benefit for young men, more so than for young women. Because women become women the second they are able to have babies, but men only become men through acting in the world and being told, or socially signaled to, by other men that they are indeed men. How does this idea relate to war and our culture, our Western culture's overweening insistence on the interchangeability of men and women? Well, war is the ultimate expression of violence. I think we can all agree on that. It is the quote-unquote tip of the spear, as it were. And without the energies of young men channeled into violent action at the point of inflection, warfare itself translates into either a low-stakes video game, think Call of Duty for the dopamine-addicted crowd, or an entertainment and amusement, no better than cheering for the lions to eat the Christians in the Roman Colosseum 2,500 years ago. Adding women to that mix doesn't elevate the cause, nor does it encourage more honorable behavior among the young men who will still primarily be drawn to the violence that makes war possible. Societies and cultures need outlets for the energies of young men, and traditionally, in places geographically, culturally, politically, and economically not inside the postmodern West, the main outlets for the energies of young men have either been work or warfare. But there is no martial glory to be gained in the postmodern white-collar work. There are no odes written to a well-written email. And when men and women can both type alike, the line that separates, and should continue to do so, is the line that allows war and warfare and violence to be conducted in as short, violent, and definitive a way as possible for the good of all involved. And well, that's it for me. Thank you for listening to the Leadership Lessons from the Great Books podcast today. And now that you've made it this far, you should subscribe to the audio version of this show on all the major podcast players, including Apple iTunes, Spotify, YouTube Music, and everywhere else where podcasts are available. There's also a video version of our podcast on our YouTube channel. Like and subscribe to the video version of this podcast on the Leadership Toolbox channel on YouTube. Just search for Leadership Toolbox and hit the subscribe button there on YouTube. And while you're doing that, leave a 5-star review if you like what we're doing here on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Just go below the player and hit 5 stars. We need those reviews to grow, and it's the easiest way to help grow this show. And tell all your friends, of course, in leadership. By the way, if you don't like what we're doing here, well, you can always listen to another leadership show. There are several other good ones out there. At least that's what I've heard. All right. Well, that's it for me.